Well, the ANC is reportedly seeking a meeting with former President Thabo Mbeki tomorrow to discuss that letter. In the letter penned to the ANC Deputy President, Mashatile, Mbeki is scathing about the way the party has handled several matters, including the Phala Phala scandal that has engulfed the presidency. Mbeki says he is concerned about the fact that the ANC instructed its MPs to block the parliamentary inquiries that would have probed the matter. Let's speak to political analyst Lukhanyo Vangqa. Thank you for being with us, as always. Fikile Mbalula, the Secretary General, saying they've been seeking out this meeting. He said we don't run away from issues. Is this the right way for the ANC to handle this sensitive matter now?
Good evening, Francis, and good evening to the viewers as well. I wouldn't know if it's the right way to handle matters, considering that these matters had been deliberated on before by the NEC, if you remember, leading up to the ANC's conference. So President Mbeki raising these issues again, and these issues now being taken to the NWC or to the national officials by the ANC. I don't know if it's elevating President Thabo Mbeki above all other members of the ANC. That's the first one. But the second one is that President Zuma had written a similar scathing address to President Ramaphosa on issues of Phala Phala, and that letter was never given the same attention that it seems President Mbeki is getting from Fikile Mbalula and the national officials. So it's concerning why then these two would be treated differently, and why these two would further be treated differently to other members of the ANC who've raised similar discontent with Phala Phala issues. So they need to have at least a principled approach to how they handle internal matters in the ANC.
Could it not be because Zuma would not be seen as a neutral party in any way because of the history? Let's just look at what Thabo Mbeki said. The logic is he's saying that there's a risk that they're making the same mistake, the ANC is making the same mistake with President Ramaphosa that it did in fact when President Zuma was president, shielding him around Nkandla.
Yes, those parallels that President Mbeki draws between Phala Phala matter and the Nkandla matter, and how the ANC seemingly is making the same mistakes that it made there, is an observation that is made by many other people as well, to say that the ANC seemingly has not learned its lessons from how it was closing ranks around matters of corruption. They were not closing ranks on issues of principle and issues of their leader on principle grounds, but they seem to be closing ranks on matters of corruption that are beguiling their leader. So President Mbeki draws those comparisons, but we also in the body politic have also drawn similar comparatives, but also the way that the ANC is hamstringing Parliament from undertaking its constitutional responsibility to hold the executive accountable by blocking investigations into issues of wrongdoing in Phala Phala, in ESCOM, as alleged by Andre Derrida, but in many other institutions as well. The ANC seems to be hamstringing Parliament from Luthuli House from undertaking their constitutional responsibilities. And I think that's something that President Mbeki also raises sharply. But those comparatives do exist between Phala Phala and Nkandla.
But back to your concern that he is being elevated, is that not maybe because Mbeki hasn't been embroiled in anything like Nkandla or Phala Phala? Obviously he has strong critics, but he hasn't been tainted by corruption, and there's no history of bad blood between him and Ramaphosa.
Yes, you could make that argument fairly, Francis, and that argument, then my problem with that would be an ad hominem argument, in that you first look at who the person is that is making these arguments, because I think even if President Zuma is tainted or anything, but the quality of what he says, the argument that he raises with regards to Phala Phala deserved similar attention that is now being given to President Mbeki. So we should not look at who says something, but rather look at the contents and the merits of what is being said. But that's on the other one. The issue again that I'd raise with you, Francis, is that we must not have short memories, because President Mbeki accuses the ANC of the very same thing that Andrew Feinstein accused him of in his book After the Party, when he said he steamrolled, together with Trevor Manuel, parliamentary processes by SCOPA to stop those from investigating the arms deal the transactions that were also, beleaguered by allegations of corruption. So again, yes, he might be an individual that's an elder statesman, but he was also involved in some of the very same things that he's accusing the ANC of doing today.
All right, good point. Thank you. So I was interested in something the first Deputy Secretary General said, Nomvula Mokonyane, that this letter was not meant for the public and the governing party will work on a resolution with Mbeki himself. Do you think Thabo Mbeki would have not known that this would get out into the public, or do you think he was well aware that ultimately it would?
Now, there's differences, Francis said, between who the intended party is and what the delivery method to that intended party is. I agree with Nomvula Mokonyane that this letter and the way that it's addressed and some of the style of writing that is used here is not meant for the general public. It's meant for the ANC and the ANC member. When Thabo Mbeki goes into this letter, under each and every allegation that he gives to the NEC, he raises the issues of counter-revolution and counter-revolutionary forces. Now, that is very ANC speak. Those are ANC idiosyncrasies, and those are not the general public parlance that we use to deal with issues of corruption or malfeasance. We use issues of PFMA, we use good governance, we use anti-corruption language, but he doesn't use that. He goes strictly into, evoking the feelings of counter-revolution. And thus, those are deep and very sensitive areas for ANC members, because the ANC still has a fear and is anxious of the fact that they might have been infiltrated by counter-revolutionary forces when they were transitioning from apartheid into the democratic dispensation. And those fears, when you raise issues of counter-revolution, you evoke those fears that there are some amongst us who are working with counter-revolutionary forces and therefore are countering the National Democratic Revolution. So yes, President Mbeki was writing specifically to ANC members in this letter.
All right, and we'll see if more details then come about how it got out. We're running out of time. Finally, in general, is Mbeki on the money here, that there's such a lack of faith and trust in the ANC that if they don't embrace complete transparency now, I mean, there's an existential threat to the party that has been recognized?
Yes, absolutely, I agree, Francis. The ANC has completely abandoned the moral high ground. The ANC doesn't speak as a moral authority on almost anything that is important in society. For a political party that calls itself the leader of society, they really have no good moral standing in society. So the manner in which they continue to close ranks around corruption, the manner in which they seem to have a lethargy to attack issues of corruption, that further alienates them and creates the social distance between the ANC and society itself. You'd find that the ANC is moving too far from society to such an extent that it affects its electoral support, and you can see the decline in electoral support of the ANC. And some of these declines you can link back directly to incidents of corruptions within the ANC and by ANC leaders, and the lack of action by the ANC against those that have been implicated in corruption. So President Mbeki is quite correct in that the levels of corruption and allegations of corruption against the ANC really affect its electoral support and public standing.
All right, well, we will wait and see if the details of the meeting between the ANC and former President Thabo Mbeki are made public. Thank you for your take, political analyst Lukhanyo Vangqa.